What is the difference between jail and prison? The short and simple answer is that prison is when you're sentenced to over 365 days, or a year and 1 day. Jail is for shorter sentences that are 365 days or less. Jails are also where people are held while they're in trial still. So remember that a lot of people that are in jail are being held while they're fighting their case, but they're not actually sentenced yet. So you could have somebody in a county jail for murder that may be fighting their trial for several years. In this case, since they're not sentenced to over a year yet, they would spend the entirety of this time in jail until they are sentenced or found not guilty and released. Now, another circumstance where somebody could spend less than a year in prison is if someone was sentenced to a year and a day. Now, if you're sentenced to a year and a day with good time, you could be out in 6 to 8 months in a lot of states. As well, there's work release programs that allow inmates to spend the last 6 months of their sentence on the outside of the facility. In this case, you could potentially be walking around on the streets within just a few months of being sentenced to a year in prison. Now, here's what's surprising for a lot of people, is that people that are familiar with jail and prison and have been to both, a lot of times will prefer prison over jail. The reason for this is that jails are not meant for long-term living. They're just basically big concrete holding cells. You don't have a lot of freedom or even the ability to make phone calls and things like that when you want to, whereas prison is set up for long-term living. There are weight rooms with gym memberships that you can get. There are hobby shops where you can go and build birdhouses and chessboards if you want. They have music rooms a lot of times.
I can see from my balcony your garden with cypress and fruit trees. Well, I really enjoy the view of your garden.
You get regular chaplain services that you can go and take advantage of. There's just a lot more freedom within the prisons that you can walk around and have access to a lot of different things like that. Now, obviously, your freedom around the facility would depend on your custody level. They have minimum, medium, maximum, and in a state or two, I think super maximum, which is not very common. Most people are going to fall into minimum, medium, or also what they call closed custody. If you're closed custody, you probably don't have a lot of these freedoms, and you're going to spend most of the time in your jail cell or prison cell. But if you're minimum or medium custody, you could have choice of who your cellmate is. You could have a regular band that you practice and rehearse with. You could be involved with the chaplain and the church and help to set up church services every Sunday. You could just be involved in a lot of different things that are around the prison. You can also hold a regular job in prison. The pay isn't very well, usually ranging between about 25 and 35 cents an hour. But you just basically live more of a regular life in prison. You work, you hang out with your friends, you get time out on the yard or in your hobby or the weight room. You just basically have more freedoms within a prison than you do in jail.